Okay, thank you, Zoom. And let's start with Amy Karle. She's a multimedia artist. She calls herself, I like the ultra contemporary. I like the term because she deals with the very latest technology and science. She has exhibited in 3 continents. If you saw the last festival, Life Art Science Technology Festival that we organized the last time before COVID, so 2019, at Stanford. She was one of the she had a piece exhibited there. The BBC named her one of the 100 I remember most influential women in the world. And that's it. I'll let you. So that's the thing I wanted to say at the beginning. If you go to lasertalks.com, you find extensive bios, not just the 2 sentences I read, and the link to their website. Okay, so Amy, I'll give you the podium.
How's this? Okay. I am muted. It's working? Yes. This one? Okay, I think it's we're working. Okay, I'm going to start over. Technology is advancing faster than we can conceive of its impacts on humanity and evolution. The fusion of machines, data, and biological systems is transforming our lives, our bodies, and our beings in ways that we have yet to fully comprehend. It's nonetheless reshaping our world and reshaping us physically and emotionally, and we often don't realize it until we're living through it. It's an absolutely amazing time. We have the tools to create almost anything that we can imagine, and also things that we cannot yet fathom. We have the technology to save lives, but at the same time, we don't understand the implications of tampering with nature or what will happen to our planet or our species as we do. I explore this range of impacts from dangers to potentials and possibilities, questioning the implications on our lives and on our future. And I approach these questions by using the actual technologies in question to research and create art and design. My intention is that in creating the work, I'm actually pushing the vision, the technology, and the path forward for a healthier and more enlightened future. I work across many disciplines and tool sets, but as our tech tools progress, these categories unify more and more. These used to be very separate, now they're merging. And I use our tools and technologies as a mirror to ourselves, as a mirror to who we are, and as a mirror to who we could become. I almost always use the body in my work because it's our way of experiencing the world, our way of going through the world. And as the body and technology come together, the impact on our lives and our future becomes even more pronounced. This makes it crucial for us to be proactive in shaping our technological landscape and understand how our technology shapes us, because there's a really important relationship there. These are garments I made based on anatomy. They're representations of anatomical systems in visual forms. I grew up with one of those encyclopedias that had all the different laminate pages of the different systems, and this is kind of that 3D version of that. But these are actually, the process I used to create these garments is actually now used to make scoliosis braces in lightweight 3D printable casts. And so they're actually technically reshaping our bodies. And working in this method of using body-based research and tech tools or biotech tools reveals not only opportunities, but a lot of ethical and bioethical questions. So as I'm working through making artwork using these kinds of tools, all these questions arise in the process. And my journey as an artist is all about questions, questions about life, questions about identity, questions about the potentials of humanity, and who we could become and what we can create that's never been possible before. And I'm always trying to push the boundaries of what's imaginable, using these new tools to reveal things, new potentials, things I couldn't think of before, things that we couldn't make in any other way. And although I really work in the material realm, well, the digital and material realm, my work is to reveal the invisible, more spiritual aspects and questions as well. I'm really trying to examine these deep fundamental questions of what it means to be human and what it means to be alive. Some exploring what it means to be human and what it means to be alive is biological in nature. And there's all these different ways that we can measure what it means to be alive from a scientific stance, like if a heart is beating, if we're breathing. But as an artist, I'm concerned with all these different ways that make us alive, the emotional sense of what it means to be alive, all these realms beyond what we can measure, this dynamic internal landscape that's happening inside of us all the time that makes us very much human. And looking at all these other intelligences and how technology might reflect those intelligence or affect these dimensions of existence. This piece is an early piece in a series of durational biofeedback performance artworks where I'd connect my body to technology, and over periods, long durations, I would meditate. So in this case, I would meditate for 5 to 8 hours while I was hooked up to a vintage analog Sandine image processor, which is a vintage video and sound processor to output sound and video in real time. And it was really the performance that was the art, because I was showing that we have all these states going on inside of us all the time. And I was using technology to help present those states, but it's really in stillness that we can see it most. I'm fascinated by all these intelligences that are beyond our understanding. Beyond those, we have the kind of knowledge and way to study beyond our language mind, beyond what we can replicate, but that we nonetheless very much live through. And I'm asking questions about the impacts that technology can have across all of these intelligences, not just those that we know how to measure. So diving into this raises a lot of questions about existence, about life, it opens like all these different doors to contemplate and all these different tools to explore. So many natural and technological intelligences, artificial intelligence being one of them. When we create artificial intelligence, we tend to create it in the image of ourselves. When we think about technology and artificial intelligence, we tend to think of computers or a robot, but I'm thinking about how we can integrate this technology inside of us to enable us to be more life-sustaining, enable us to be more human. So if you think about something like a pacemaker, this is a highly technological device that's implanted into someone. Some of them can even page their doctor and communicate with an outside source. But when we look at someone with that technology in them, we don't see them as a cyborg. We see someone whose life has been saved. So this is the kind of way that I'm looking at how to integrate technology with our bodies. And I believe that artificial intelligence is not just about the technological, but about the biological as well. And as our computer sciences and our biology merges more and more, we're seeing this more and more. With the development of our exponential technologies like AI, machine learning, synthetic biology, genetics, robotics, implants, bionics, 3D printing, bioprinting, wet AI, this overall emergence of infotech and biotech, the concept of life itself has been expanded. And using these tools offers this unprecedented opportunity to potentially transcend life as we know it, actually reshape our bodies, reshape intelligent systems, maybe even reshape consciousness, definitely reshape creativity, and even reshape and impact evolution. In the heart of evolution, I explore the heart as both a vital organ and as the organ associated with deep emotional feeling as we use biotech to advance our species. I worked with cardiac surgeons to work through how the form and function of the heart's vasculature could be improved through generative engineering and generative design to propose a design that could potentially improve function and reduce consequences in the case of blockages. And this is a version that I'm working towards bioprinting with human cardiac stem cells, or excuse me, human cardiac cells that would actually beat. And bioprinting vasculature has many benefits, not just for the heart. We would be a step closer to actually being able to make, print, and grow viable organs. But this also raises very important questions about the consequences of redesigning the body. And in this piece, I chose the heart because the heart is the organ associated with deep emotional feeling. So if we were to switch that out or change it in some way, what would the implications of that be? If we alter this organ, who would we become physically and emotionally, even spiritually? What would be the evolutionary impact on humanity? And the technical process of this work is very complex, but it's not complex at all compared to some of these ethical questions that arise and the philosophical questions that arise in the process of making the work. Regenerative Reliquary is a bioprinted piece. It's a bioart piece made of biodegradable 3D printed scaffolds for growing stem cells into bone installed in a bioreactor. So the intention is that over time, stem cells that are seeded onto this scaffold grow into bone and the scaffold will disintegrate. What I was working with was this idea for people that need bone grafts and transplants to be able to make a system that could be implanted with a lower risk of rejection. So having a scaffold that would disintegrate over time, being able to use their own genetic material to donate to themselves, grow a piece that then could be shaped to their body ahead of time through 3D scans, so they'd have less time open on the table and planted right into them. These are all the kinds of technical things that I was thinking about when I made this piece. So this is, this is really exciting to consider we can work with this intelligence of life and couple it with our technology to create something unlike anything we've ever been able to create before. I can envision this factory of the future where just a few cells are used as the basis for an entire workflow to create many different things, but it wouldn't have to be the same thing over and over again. It could be various replacement parts as well as new enhancements that are unlike anything that we naturally have. We could grow things for outside of the body as well. Like, what if our technology was made out of reprogrammable cells, and what if those cells were decentralized? And then what if that was to be printed and implanted back into our body to communicate with both our internal systems and the outside world? This is just so exciting to me to think that we have these potentials and that we can also heal and enhance and empower ourselves in ways that were never possible before. But we have to be extremely careful, and it's really important to consider that there's implications we absolutely cannot understand, and to approach this with great care and respect. And I work with bioprinting because I believe that this is an area that stands to make a huge potential in our lives. Modern medicine has done a really great job of keeping us alive to a full life expectancy, but we don't have anything that allows us to live beyond a human life expectancy. If we could replace out our organs, we may potentially be able to live longer. And most human advancements start with healing. In the case of bioprinting or creating organs, those would go towards people who need implants and transplants. And there's a lot of people in the world who need transplants desperately. And there's also people that can wait to have a transplant grown for them. But then the next step is, as we get old, we could start switching out our parts then too, which could potentially renew our body, allow us to live much longer. So at this point, this is when we get into really interesting and important ethical questions, including like, who would have the right to this? In America, it'd probably be for the wealthy. In other countries, it might be assigned by the government as to like who they deem worthy or contributing to society in a certain way. It also brings issues up of the right to life and the right to death, and questions like, if there's a very prolonged life or if there's no death, then what's the meaning of life? How do we live a full life? So even though this technology is not developed to this point yet, it's really important that we ask these fundamental questions now so that we can make informed decisions of how we want to shape and use this technology when it is ready. Man-made changes can occur much faster than nature, and I'm concerned about its impacts on our future. These are some sculptures based on data from a triceratops and scientific research in de-extinction that study the potential consequences of using biotech to bring back extinct species in new forms through the long view of time. Now, this was really crazy to me. The Smithsonian came to me and they're like, hey, we want you to do this project. Hey, can you use a dinosaur? Hey, could you work with our scientists? And I didn't know people were really working in this field, but they are. So this is very exciting, concerning, scary, all the feelings for me. So I was thinking about, if we're looking at de-extinction, how can we also take that same perspective and look in that far forward into the future? And I was trying to do that with a basic system of evolutionary machine learning to design these different morphologies, trying to predict that far in the future. Now, of course, these are totally speculative, but I was trying to actually, how could we think through that process millions of years into the future? I'm really concerned with evolution that natural selection never designed. We're headed that way, or that direction, at exponential rates. So it's important to focus on who we want to become and how we use our technology to get there. It's important that we think about our future generations and be stewards for them. How do we even think about 100 years from now is difficult, let alone 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years. I can easily envision a future where our bio and technological intelligences empower and enhance our lives. A future where highly autonomous integrated systems surpass human intelligence across numerous domains, where AI becomes enmeshed with our bodies and our beings. Brain-computer interfaces, neurotech, being able to access all the information from the internet and other sources too. Like, what if I could right now understand everything that you're thinking and be able to respond to that and modify my talk to it immediately? This is, there's amazing opportunities here, but there's very scary scenarios as well. So this is more work in my biofeedback kind of grouping of work. This is some work I did with easy to use neuro headsets. In this particular video, I was teaching myself to be more musically inclined. I hear that the sound isn't coming through. But I never really identified as being a musical person, and I wanted to be more sensitive in that way. So over the period of 2 weeks, I wore a neuro headset and connected my brain waves to output video and sound through a digital interface. And over that period of time, I all of a sudden started, when I go out into the world, hear songs in the world around me and the garbage trucks going by and the birds singing. And I never had that experience before, but really the most exciting thing to me is I started dreaming in sounds. And I never had that experience before. Maybe like if a phone rang while I was sleeping, it would kind of, I'd hear it and it'd wake me up. But I never had songs in my dreams. And now to this day, I still do. So I was able to use my own body and technology as a mirror back to myself to teach myself, to learn through this technological interface. And this opens really amazing opportunities for learning or understanding or going into states of knowing, like, what if we could feel the emotions that a dolphin feels? One of my favorite examples is Dawn Cafe in Japan. This is a cafe where people who are bedridden, quadriplegics, paraplegics, use brain interfaces to communicate with a robot server in a cafe. So now they can have a basic income, they can interface with different people and communicate. Otherwise, they would be laying in their bed all day. So this is one of the really exciting examples. And now scientists can read thoughts into text via generative AI through either to output image or text. And with these neural headsets too, they don't even need implants to do it anymore. And this brings up a lot of really important questions. You know, it's hard to know what's real anymore. What if you have a constant flow of information all the time and stimulation into our brain? Like, we already have a glimpse of that and know how that feels. And it's way too much. It's totally overwhelming. And then ownership, who would own the thought output, right? If one company is making the bio interfaces or the headsets, another company created the AI interface, then there's the artist who created reference images, or we have, you know, the different outputs. And the whole process could be recorded by a company who makes the recording devices. Who owns it? It's probably not the original thinker. So cognitive rights really come into play here too. Like, how do we own our rights, and how do we own our thoughts, and how do we own that output? And what is important to own in that process? And then again, how it impacts the overwhelm, the unintended consequences of dividing our attention, giving us decision fatigue. If any of you work in Gen AI, you know it produces way faster than anything that we can edit through. And that leads us to making not such good decisions. And also the majority of AI models, as we commonly are using, use verbal language as the basis, and they tag things. But I'm a visual communicator. I'm not a verbal communicator. The language that I speak the best is visual, is art. And it tells all these very complex emotional and technological stories in one instant. As an artist, I work from the areas that are not of the language thinking mind. And when we tag it with language, it could be reduced down to something like this, which was really funny. This is what this was tagged as. And even in more advanced models, you know, the information that we're using is being drawn from the past. It's pre-trained. So there's this danger of homogenization of thinking that it can occur. Like we can all end up thinking alike because it's all the same information that is being fed to us. It's not new. And if we lean on it too much, it could disable our critical thinking skills, our creativity, or other intelligences. Like I work with a lot of doctors, or also sculptors and musicians. So you think about these different categories that seem so different, but we all work in kinesthetic ways too. Doctors touch bodies, musicians touch instruments, sculptors use their hands. We're all being taken off of art tools and off of the body, and we're being put behind screens. We're becoming homogenized behind screens. What do we lose in that process? What intelligences do we fail to develop? And especially when it's something that's not flowing through the language thinking region. So we may become better verbal thinkers as we, like in this case, hone our prompt craft. But what about all these other intelligences? How do we continue to nurture and grow our other intelligences? How do we live as multiple intelligences and through multiple technologies? How will we embody ourselves into machine or show up into a virtual world? Who will we become when our bodies merge with biotechnology and AI? What are our rights to live or die in this space, especially when we think about the massive digital footprint that we leave after we pass away? Think about all the medical records, our DNA records. How will this data potentially be used in the future, way after we pass away? I'm considering this wide range of what will happen to our bodies and our beings as we integrate further into these spaces. But ultimately, I think that we will look back at this time in history and recognize it as a new chapter to create things that we could have only dreamed of before, and to recreate ourselves in ways that were never possible before. The time that we're at in our evolutionary process is of humans and technology merging. And as we enter this hybrid age, technology will shape us as much as we shape it. The future doesn't have to be something that happens to us. It's something that we can create, or at least co-create. In this era where boundaries between physical and digital are dissolving, and where infotech and biotech are converging, our technologies not only offer us a window into our inherent potential, but also this mirror reflecting back to us our collective issues and our aspirations as well. And it's really important to see, is it reflecting what you want to see? And if it's not, then we need to do something about it. We stand on the brink of a new phase of evolution where humans don't merely use technology, but we embody it, where technology will shape us as much as we shape it. This path forward is uncharted. It's filled with dangers and possibilities. As our digital and biotechnologies advance, we don't need to lose our humanity, though. In fact, we have this incredible opportunity to discover profound new dimensions of what it means to be human, and use our technologies to actually exceed our potential in ways that were never possible before. It's an opportunity for a revolution, a new evolution, and an opportunity for a new renaissance if we choose to use our technologies that way. Thank you.
Very good. Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Is an option that we can have things move in and out of us, so clean vessels or
Totally, yes. The question was, do I see a situation where we can have things that go into our bodies, clean us out, and go back into the bodies? Yes, totally. And there's very smart people working in like nanotechnology on that and nanorobotics. These are interesting to me because that's where I have to learn a lot about the body too, like to learn that, oh wow, we can't actually clean out plaque from the heart because it can break off, and that's when heart attacks occur. So a lot of we'll learn a lot in this process, I think, too. This is what's really exciting to me, like as an artist, to collaborate with these different disciplines and learn from them. But yes, totally. And I'm excited about that too. And then also what happens when it goes from my body to your body? What do we share in that process? What learnings do we have from each other? Is there something that's carried over?
You think the human will diverge or converge? We have so many opportunities, so many convergence of possibilities and flow to go. You think the theory or the art, the version of art will take us the same route, or maybe we will all go our different processes and even individually, like evolve something very, very different. And
the question is, do I think that technology can help us as humans to converge and become more like evolutionary or diverge? And I think these are some of the paths that I'm questioning. I don't know. I can imagine different scenarios. So like a very easy scenario, because we're in Silicon Valley, is to imagine homogenation of the masses, because we're all using the same technology. It's all pre-trained. But then there is all these different opportunities for diversification as well. So we have to look at our bigger structures too. And these are fundamentally important questions that we have to work with different cultures and people that think differently than us to make sure that we are growing in the direction we want to, because there's always going to be bad actors. And then there's going to be the actors that are not so conscious or just profit driven that can put us down a certain path. But really, what are our highest ideals as humanity, and what do we want to work towards? That's the fundamentally important question that we have to ask ourselves, and then design our technologies from there.
You mentioned medicine and doctors a couple of times. Can you envision projects where the outcome would be a tool or a practice that's actually used and also?
I hope so, and that would be some of the ideal scenarios for my work. So, like for the example of regenerative reliquary, that the bioprinted hand design piece, that was made in 2016, and I collaborated with very smart scientists and technologists, material scientists. We had to develop new technologies to be able to make that piece. I wanted something that was uniquely recognizable as human. And of all the bones in our body, hands and skulls are very recognizable. So this is a huge scale. Scientists usually work on the lab on a very small scale. So because of these demands, we had to develop new materials that wouldn't time out, and find different ways of printing, develop the 3D printers. And still to date, this is the largest 3D printed scaffold known to be made for cell culture. So these are the kind of projects where I get really excited, where we can have advancements in all of our fields of everyone who works together. So ideally, yes, this would be eventually used for medical purposes, but right now it's at least being used for scientific purposes. I don't know about getting through FDA approval and all of that, but we did make advancements. And also my work really tells to help the stories, to help scientists get funding to show how the technology could be used and applied.
Do you make any of your designs wearable?
On avatars, yeah, I am working in some of like the skins, and I'm looking at how we transverse our beings from our living state to the online state in the metaverse. That's something that I am actively working on. And I think I showed a few of those designs, but I didn't specifically point them out in the lecture.
Oh, one more question.
Do you envision power converging with your kind of diverging, or where each individual has a lot more choice on like how they evolve, how they choose like their life, how they choose?
I'm hesitant to answer this question because I think about it a lot and I'm concerned about it. Unfortunately, the way that we're going now, I think it's going to go into the hands of the power of a few. And this is something that we've seen for a long time throughout history. However, individuals still have so much power in that too. And this is where I continue to work. So I was raised in the home of IBM. And when I was a kid, I went on field trips and I'd see these computers that were like, the size of half this room. And we were told these stories about when I was my age, that we would have computers to be able to solve all the world's problems, world hunger, financial imbalances. And we're there now. We do have computers to do that, but we haven't used them that way. And I think about this all the time, that it's really up to us of how we choose to use our technology. So this is where we really have to work to make sure that we do hold on to some of our autonomy and our own choice. The positive in that is that a lot of these technologies are now more accessible to a much larger audience than ever before. So this is where we do have opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Last